Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Magic, Healing, and Manifestation Show. I am so excited because I'm welcoming back another speaker that I've had on my show previously, but this time we get to talk about our culture, our heritage, and so much more. So I'm very, very excited to introduce you to Jonita D'souza. Hi, Jonita, welcome.
Oh, I'm so excited to be back here speaking with you, Nikki. I'm so happy for this conversation to happen.
Me too. And for those of us that aren't really familiar with your work, could you give us a brief introduction about who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my work is around self-leadership for women, and it is was specifically based on working with the ancient feminine art. So I include the Taoist art, the Tantric art, and as you might have guessed or not, I am from an Indian lineage and living in London for a really long time. So my work has conspired to be a bridge between the Eastern philosophy, the traditions, and the modern day living, and how we as women can include that in our busy lifestyles through our feminine energy, through our sensuality, through simple rituals, and make our lives much more fulfilling. So that's been the body of my work over the last decade.
Wow. One of the things that came up was like how, first of all, like how did you get into your work? And then a little bit more on the topic of the show, like did you have to overcome any expectations to get to where you are today?
Um, expectations, yeah. Oh my God, this is a heavy word. Yeah, so relatable. Expectations to where I am today. This where I am today is totally different from what I was expected from to be. So that's a really interesting topic to speak about. I grew up in India, and I moved to London only when I was 23. So my upbringing had been in India, and I always aspired to be in the West. I somehow felt that women in the West were free to express themselves. So, and then, in the late 90s, we were introduced to MTV, and I used to see women being free and being able to wear whatever they want. So as a teenager, I was like, wow, Western women are free. I need to be there. I need to break free. So that was always in the back of my head, and expectations were different, obviously. Like many Indians, I grew up to be an IT engineer. So if you really think about it, it was a totally different lifestyle that was expected out of me. I came from a very privileged background of highly educated people, doctors and engineers and teachers. So there was a very high expectation of me to follow suit, right? So, and thankfully my father, he was one of my cheerleaders, so he always instilled this idea in me that for me to be free, I have to be for me to be an independent woman, I have to be financially free. And growing up in India, it was a very heavily masculine dominated society. It is still, but not to that extent. But at that time, women were not, what I could see around was that women were not as free to express, to spend their money, or to lead the family, or to have common like 50-50 even in conversations and decision making of their own family choices and all of that. So my father was very liberal, and he said that you don't have to be under any man, and the only way you can do that is by studying really hard, and getting a really good job, and then making so much money that no man can be over you. So I was like, yes, okay. So I was studying really hard, and was speaking to one of my colleagues just now about it, like how much pressure I was under, and so many students, so many of my friends were under, especially when we came from a well-to-do family. There was even more pressure that because we are such a family, like we have to maintain the reputation now. Now you have to study so hard. So I remember waking up like 4 a.m. every day since I was 9 years old, you know, waking up, studying really hard, and there was always this competition among the doctor's family that, you know, their children are A, not even B or C, but A plus, you know, in their grades. So all of that. So there was this high expectation. And there I was thinking, women in the West are free. I need to be there.
Your story is so relatable, and it's so different because like I think my mom was very conditioned to be in the masculine too, so I heard the exact same things come from her. And when I got married, I remember she gave me a call and she said, make sure all of your husband's money goes through you, and you want to be independent, you want to be financially stable, you need to make your own money, but you also need to control his money. And that was like my parents' dynamic. Like my mom made sure she controlled the finances. She made sure that her name was under all the assets. And and so my father was really like the one who couldn't leave her because he had no control of any of the money or the assets. And he sometimes he would like sneak money and give it to us as gifts. And he would say, like, don't tell your mom or things like that. But when I grew up living under those kind of expectations, it was always like, I need to make a lot of money in order to be worthy of her love. I need to make a lot of money in order to be considered successful. And that scarcity mindset creeped in where it was like, if I didn't have a education, if I didn't go to like Ivy League school and I wasn't a doctor or a lawyer or somebody that made like 6 figures a year right out of college, like super unrealistic, then that I was a failure. And those were the things that always came up, like, you're such a failure. And she said this to everyone. It wasn't just me. It was like she told my sister, she told my family members, oh, my daughter's a failure. My daughter's a failure. And she didn't do this and she didn't do that. And so it's so relatable, like your story, but also coming from a different perspective, like a Chinese background, where they're still so similar. I don't even know how that came to be, right?
Yeah, it's a very, the society is very culture oriented, and there's no much questioning the elders. Like, you're not allowed to question the elders, and that's it. That was one of the things that was taught to me, which scarred me to a really big level, I would say. So as I progressed in my life, and by the age of 22, I got a really good job in an IT company. I was this IT engineer. I was making really good salary for that age, and you know, being among men, and like I was like, yeah, okay, now I'm financially free, I can be independent, I have the money, I am in a new city away from home, so I was so free, you know, from my parents invigilation and all of that. So deep inside, I realized that I actually don't feel free. I go to work and I am surrounded with men in this boardroom, and they don't even value your opinion because you're too young in the team. And I was so shy and an introvert. I could barely get a word out, even though I would have really interesting ideas and really efficient ways of working. But my mouth was shut. I couldn't speak, and I did not feel expressed. And I was still dreaming to be in the West. And then I got an opportunity to move to London, which was like, wow, dream come true. And I moved to London. And yeah, for the first 6 months, I felt free and I enjoyed my freedom, and kind of like overdid it, you know, like when a bird is, you know, set free from the cage, like she goes into all sorts of naughty things. So there I was, you know, doing everything possible, like, and it was during that time I also realized, I had a lot of girlfriends around that time, and I realized the pressure that women in the West had in terms of belonging, that they have to look a certain way. A lot of pressure was put on. They have to look a certain way to be accepted in this society, to be accepted in social circles. to be successful in at workplace, to be seen as something valuable. Everything was all about looking good, and you have to always look good. So there was a lot of doing energy happening in terms of looks rather than really feeling, and it was quite tiring for some of the ladies. And on those drunk evenings, we would share our dramas, and we will spill our hearts out, like, what is this? We don't get it. Why do we have to always be doing the sexy in order to be accepted? And this was, doing the sexy was such a common thing in the West, and I was like, this is too much, this is too tiring. And that was a time where I was confused, because women in the West looked free to me, but they were not really feeling that freedom from inside, because they were in the societal pressure of looking good all the time to be accepted. And especially women of color, there was even more pressure, like an immigrant. I have to really look good to be accepted. I shouldn't look like an immigrant who know less than, like, I know English, I can speak better, and and there was like a lot of performance that was put out. So it was becoming really tiring to me. And within 6 months, I also heard the news of my father's passing away.
Oh.
And that really, really shattered me. I was so confused, being in the West, and I did not want to go back to India. And I remember being in the plane from London to India. It was an 18 hours flight. And all I was praying was that before the plane lands, I wish I die. I was praying for my death,
Oh
because I did not want my plane to land and then go and see my dead father. I better die before that. I just did not know. And it was this whole lot of confusion. Should I go back and continue my life in the West, or should I continue here? Should I, my father's words were, always echoing inside of me, that, dream big, go for your dreams and all of that. And I decided to come back to London and continue my life here. But I was a total mess. So that was the deepest, darkest place I was. And that led to a very serious skin disease that I kind of manifested, psoriasis. So it was spreading all over my body. It was spreading from my head to my hands to my legs, and it was swollen. I did a lot of blood tests. I was given a lot of steroids. I did not feel good, look good. So the pressure was even more, and I was so depressed that I wanted an answer from God. I was really angry, upset, that all I wanted was to be fully, like, to express myself and feel free. And what would it take for a woman? Like, no one can tell me what it means to be a woman in my age. Like, I was 24 at that time. I just was so confused, and nothing felt good. East did not feel good. West did not feel good. I see women here, I see women there. It's the same story in the end. We all have similar woundings. And it was during that time of when I was angry with God that I came across a Facebook ad about an essence workshop, which I decided to go. And it worked out for me. I cried the 2 hours, and it led me to a path of exploring my essence, and then exploring the feminine essence, and everything else unfolded and organically developed into my sacred work. So the expectations were totally different.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry to hear that was your experience, but it led you to where you are today. And I'm very grateful for that, because here you are sharing your gift, sharing your story. I know in my personal journey, like, finding myself was so hard, because I didn't resonate with the Asian culture, but I also didn't resonate with the Western culture. And I wanted to just, get a job and get away. And when I did get a job, it did feel like freedom. But after 2 years, I was like, my capacity to make a certain income is capped. And I just thought about my parents, and I thought how successful they were as entrepreneurs. And I was like, that's freedom. Like, that's freedom, but mixed with the Western culture of like, you know, you can become an entrepreneur, but you don't have to work like slaves to get, you know, the amount of money. And so I really tried to explore that, but it was still very masculine. Everything was like the business books out there, they were very masculine. Like, you have to do this and you have to do. And it led me, and the further away I got into my business, I just kept failing and I didn't know why I was failing. And it was meditation that brought me back. Like, I asked one of my friends in a marketing group, I said, do you know any meditation? Because I was really hopeless. It was COVID. And he was like, oh, my friend has a meditation group. You should come. And I did meditation for 2 months. And the space they held, it was just like they just saw you, they heard you, they recognized me as like, they saw me as somebody who was amazing. Whereas my whole life I was told, you're a failure, you're a failure. So that's what I told myself. I'm such a failure. I'm never getting anywhere. Why isn't it working? And I just cried. I cried in front of strangers. First time I cried in front of strangers before. But after those two months, I think that was like my soul was like, I want to hold space. And that was the beginning of my journey into where I am now. I was like, I just want to hold space. And I followed that feeling, even though I didn't know what that would look like outside of me. So I I understand. Oh, like I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear these experiences, because often we feel very lonely in this journey, and especially, you know, the sense of belonging, that you don't feel that you belong here or there. And then what do you do? Where do you go? You don't resonate with this world or that world. And it even happens to me now. Like, I spend a lot of time between India and the West. And when I'm in India, I'm like, oh, no, that's it. I need to go back. And when I'm there, I'm like, okay, I need to go to India. And like, so this sense of belonging, I think it's also an illusion, because we as an individual change in different environments as well. What I've noticed, the way we respond, react, and our triggers are different as well. So it's a tricky thing. I think for belonging, like you did, like I did, that we have to claim our seat. Like, yes, I belong here and I'm taking my space. And through that, yeah, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of vulnerability. And I see you for that. It is a journey worthwhile, though.
Thank you so much for recognizing me and seeing me. I know, because our conversation was talking so much about being so much in the masculine, like your specialty now is feminine leadership. And I would love to know, like, how that integrated into your life. Like, what did you start doing different that you started to embody feminine? And what was that like?
Um, yes, so this is really interesting, because the concept of feminine embodiment really involved connecting with the body. And when I started connecting with my body, what I first encountered was feelings of anger and repression. So this was so surprising for me, because when I started meditating and doing all these affirmations and also doing some body work, what I was expecting, that I will feel good and, you know, I will, you know, get rid of my emotional baggage or this heaviness that I've been feeling. But instead, there I was, like a even bigger piece of mess, like literally, like as if somebody had taken the band-aid off the wound, and I was bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And I got really tired of, you know, just this bleeding itself. And I remember asking my teacher at that time, that doesn't make sense. I thought I'm going to be on a journey to find myself and feel good, but here I am, and there is more layers and more layers and more layers. Like, what is this? I'm going crazy. And she told me a very interesting thing, that in doing the work of the feminine and connecting to your somatic wisdom, your womb wisdom, be prepared to meet a lot of anger, a lot of repression. And this is a very common theme in many women. because of what we have been storing and holding on to throughout our lives, and then still showing up as this good girl, or still showing up as this responsible woman, or still showing up as this woman who wants to do her best. But then, those repressed emotions don't disappear. It's there, deep seated in our womb space. So my journey then took a turn into really encountering my anger. And this was something I'm sure you can relate, that we are not taught as a culture we come from, that showing anger, no way. I did not even know. And I was like, no, I'm not angry. I'm fine. I'm okay. I did not even know how to scream out loud in anger. And she kept telling me to scream, and I could not even scream. And I was like, yeah, this is how I scream. She's like, no, you can go deeper. It's like, no, I cannot. This is it. But once that voice was released from the depths of the womb, I was shaken. Like, I was literally shaken, because I did not know that it existed inside of me. This voice even existed inside of me. And there was a relief after that, because then in that moment, I knew that my anger is not going to cause any destruction, because I always thought that my anger would cause destruction. It would spoil things for people, for others, for me. So better don't even show, right? So I remember as a girl, every time I felt angry, I would start to cry. And this is how I express my anger. I wouldn't voice it, but I would just internalize by just, sulking. I would lock myself in the bathroom and then just go cry. Once I'm done with my crying, I feel like, okay, yeah, that's how anger is supposed to look like for me. Done. So all of this anger was coming out through voicing. I could notice like my throat chakra was opening, and the body was responding more, and the body was feeling more safe. Interestingly, through this process, my psoriasis was healing as well. My skin was healing as well. I stopped taking all steroids, and my teacher told that these skin issues only show that you're not safe in your body. You are doing this to yourself. You're not safe in your body. You've got to feel safe in your emotions. And I trusted, and I went into, and a lot of my work, that's why right now, is related to the dark feminine energy, because I feel like we women are told not to go into our dark side, but when we go into our dark side, we need this power. But this power is such a creative fuel. It really adds to our creative expression as a woman. And hence, through these workings, my work conspired, because I never wanted to be this business person doing this work. I just wanted to fix my mess. That's it.
Wow. And it's so funny because, like, when I asked that question, I had expected like the light side of the feminine, and you definitely dove into the dark feminine. And that was even more beautiful, because I had the same experience. Not until very recently did I ever feel anger, because I was like, cutting the ties with mom, cutting the ties with dad. And with dad especially, I had repressed so much because he was such a passive father. He never stood up for me. And so I never learned how to stand up for myself. And that's really the masculine's role. Is the masculine supposed to protect the feminine? And we have that inside of us, both masculine and feminine. But my masculine was so imbalanced because of that. I didn't know how to say what I wanted. And every experience that I had was really just reflecting back to me, you don't deserve to be heard. Your needs are not important. Every time I got rejected, every time I was told that, oh, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, it was just an impact of, well, your voice is not important, because even if you cry, even if whatever happens to you, you're not going to be heard. So what's the point of expressing sadness or anger? What's the point of standing up for yourself? Because it's not going to make a difference around you. And that's when I gave up on myself as a child. Doing the healing work, going back, it was like, I had that experience too. My healer was like, I'm clearing your throat chakra. And she was like, and now you can scream. And I'm like, nothing. And she was like, I need you to scream. And I was like, no. And she's like, you grab a pillow and you can scream. And nothing came out. And she's like, all right, I'm just going to do energy healing and clear that chakra. It took a lot of energy healing. It took a lot of sessions to clear my throat chakra. Even though I didn't get to the point of screaming, I've noticed outwardly my expression has changed. Like I have become so much more vocal, expressing happiness. Whereas before I would be like a stone, right? Everybody else would be laughing, dancing. I'll be like uptight, like a stone, couldn't express nothing, couldn't say nothing, couldn't express my feelings to my kids. And now it's like when I notice that something isn't right, I can actually speak up, and it's really clearing itself out and feeling the anger. Some days I was like, I feel angry. And I feel no shame about that. I would tell my husband, like, you know what, can you take over because I'm tired? And I'll storm up upstairs and I'll just take a rest. And that's okay. It's okay to express anger. It doesn't always have to. People say, like, in relationships, you always have to be cordial or you have to learn how to communicate properly. But emotions are a form of communication too. As long as you're not hurting the other person or you're consciously aware of it, then it's like it's a safe space to express my emotions. I don't always have to be so uptight and cordial in front of my own family and my husband. Whereas, when I was little, it was like stepping on glass, trying to avoid emotions, avoid what people would say to me if I expressed emotions.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was your experience too, that when you were avoiding those emotions, it would come out in distorted ways in the most annoying times or the most unexpected times. And then at least to me, and then I would look back and feel guilty that, I shouldn't have reacted that way. What happened to me? What's wrong with me? And then, it's always something wrong with me because I don't even know how to react it properly, So it was such a illusion. It was an illusion that I was feeling that something is wrong with me because I feel anger inside of me, and it was mere just the learning process of seeing this emotion. Because oftentimes we are taught or we see that if we are angry, we have to express it to the person, but not really. If you're angry, it's just another emotion. Anger is an emotion. And anger, what I also came across is that anger is a secondary emotion because the primary emotion is either fear or sadness. So when we do the work of the dark feminine, we do the anger work, but then we go underneath because anger is the secondary emotion. We go layer beneath and see, well, what's the sadness behind the anger, or what's the fear behind the anger? And that's another level of exploration, which requires us to really get honest with ourselves and feel safe that we can hold our own sadness and fear first, rather than expecting out of someone else. And this is very freeing as well.
I did have a question too, because I had the same experience where instead of feeling anger, it went straight into like frustration and crying. So is that bypassing the anger and going straight to the frustration and the sadness?
Yeah, pretty much. And this is very common pattern with women, with girls, like growing girls, the nice girl syndrome, as they say. They could be taught to be nice. We internalize anger as sadness. And we even if we feel angry, we don't want to accept that. We just accept that, oh, we are sad. We're not angry, we are sad. And that's what we internalize. Whereas men, they do the opposite. When they are sad, they are angry. So this is a very biological emotional response as well, which is common to women, that when they are angry, it goes into sadness, internalizes into sadness. And this sadness is the slow poison, that really kills our magnetism.
My husband actually taught me how to be angry because he's so openly expressive, and living with his family, his brothers too, when they have a fight, oh my God, it just explodes. But living with his family actually taught me that emotions are healthy, because my family, we had 9 people in the house. silent as a mouse. Nobody talked. Nobody expressed anything. In his house, they have like three boys, and it was just like loud and boisterous and expressive. And even though they didn't have a strict, like sometimes I was like, where is his common sense? He had no common sense, but he was confident to the roof because
Yeah.
he had of outlet for his emotions and self-expression and self-identity. Whereas, like as I look at my family, everyone was so intelligent, so smart. We worked as young kids, so we had a hard work ethic, but we were so
Mm.
insecure, didn't believe that we had anything valuable to provide. And I saw the difference. I was like, oh my God, like there's something missing.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very common theme and so interesting because I've been running dark feminine retreats, and I have had women from different countries in Europe, in the US, in UK, Australia, India, and when we come together in the room and when we do this dark feminine, the womb sounding practice that I like to call, and we do some dragon breathing and all of that. So I see that most of the women have issues just voicing their anger.
Mhm.
And when it's so interesting because when I'm facilitating, I have to lead. And now it becomes really easy to do that. And in a safe container, obviously, and always to begin with, I would always recommend this to women. But the beautiful thing is that when one woman begins this sounding journey, it kind of creates a ripple effect. And within the 5 minutes, the entire room is roaring. But until then, everyone is like, okay, how do I do it? Yeah, no. But then when one woman gives permission to herself, oh my God, it creates such a ripple, such a ripple. It's so. I remember doing one of these in Spain, and we hired a big villa, and we were 8 women there, and we were doing this practice, and my husband was also in the villa at the time. Usually he helps me with the organization logistics of the retreat. So he was hanging around somewhere in the kitchen, and we had this big workshop room, and these women started roaring and like expressing the anger, and the entire house was shaking.
Oh my
And
God.
I think he was scared, like he was like, "What the hell are these women doing?" And when I came out of it, like, and everyone was like, after that, you could see like women were like, their skin were glowing, and like there was like lifted like after some kind of facial or something, there was this glow, there was this essence of joy, and women were so happy. We sat by the kitchen table, and he was there, preparing our lunch, and he was like, so what just happened?
He's like,
What just happened? Because the entire kitchen cutleries and kitchenware were shaking, were about to crack off, and I was about to go under the table because that was powerful.
oh my goodness. I absolutely love that story. Thank you for sharing it because I'm over here like overjoyed that there's such a thing of sisterhood. Like it's really sisterhood and allowing, giving yourself permission, but even watching other people gives you permission to be you, be more you. Before we end today, is there a practice that you can recommend to us that we can implement in our lives to help us reconnect more to that aspect of ourselves?
Yeah, I would highly recommend to begin with breathing, sounding, movement practice with the womb. And that's because that's where the dragon energy is coiled at the base of our womb. And when we do some certain breath work and movement around this area of our body, it automatically uncoils. And what happens when it uncoils, in the beginning, women become scared and they're like, oh my God, that's it. I can't go deeper. But you got to really trust that this is a part of you. And I like to say that dark feminine is nothing to be afraid of. She's this sister that you have repressed. She's going to be your guiding light, and she's going to be this power in you that will show you, guide you. And you don't have to be afraid of your own power, because that's one of the things that we are afraid of, our own power. We feel like if we show up in power, people will not like us. So So my free gift is related to that. So that could be really helpful for the women watching. It's a free series, 7 day series of sensually connecting to the womb space through different rituals. And then you're going to get to experience the uncoiling of your womb's energy. And it's a very slow process. I also tell women that don't dive in right away unless you're held in a safe container. I was held in a safe container. You had your healer. It's so important to be held in a container, because otherwise, we may get lost in our own emotions and then spiral down in this underworld and it becomes difficult to then come up. So safe container is so important to begin with.
Thank you so much. And for those of us who aren't really sure like what a safe container means, could you give us some examples?
Yeah, so as you said, sisterhood is so important. So safe container, what I would like is if you are guided by somebody. So if you have someone to work with, whether it's a coach, whether it's a healer, whether you're taking a program, where somewhere where you can interact your experience, so that it's not just internalizing once again. Yeah, because it's all about expressing, but then who do you express to? Yes, the wall is a good thing, but then interacting and sharing would really help to integrate even more. So which is why I like to always recommend women to have someone with you who has done this work. Doesn't have to be an expert coach or something, but there are so many women who have done this work, and maybe a coach or an expert or a healer or some online containers. There's plenty available. That's the gift of these days. There's plenty available.
Yay. Thank you so much, Jonita. So I will have the link right below the video for you guys to access. And I created a free Facebook group for all Asian healers, so you can find sisterhood and community there as well. And with that said, thank you so much, Jonita, for joining us. And I can't wait to see everybody else in the next episode.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Nicki.